Welcome to yet another episode of Perito Talk, a series in which we hold conversation with experts and opinion makers. Today we have with us a former medical doctor, a former officer of the Indian Administrative Service, and a current political or social activist who is widely respected and widely admired in the two Telugu-speaking states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Uh, Welcome, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. We are
Thank you.
extremely happy to have you here. In the first part of our conversation, we will talk with you about how to enable the career environment for school-going children. But before I begin to ask on that, I would like to know from you, what was it that triggered a qualified doctor to get into administrative service, and then at a fairly young age, I think at the age of 40, decide to give up administrative service and jump into the murky world of politics?
You know, when we grew up, my generation, it was a tumultuous period. I was born about a decade after independence, and by the time I was in college, it was about a quarter century after independence, and therefore a lot of churning in the country, a feeling that the constitutional values are not translated into reality, that the benefits of freedom are not flowing to most people. There was a lot of corruption, arbitrariness, and abuse of power. That was the prevailing mood. And then there were therefore anti-corruption movements, starting with Gujarat and then spread into Bihar, Lok Naik, JP and others, etc. Many of us were influenced deeply by that. And then came emergency. Instead of dealing with that challenge constructively and creatively for the benefit of the country, that's what political process is about. The political establishment chose to simply thwart the people's aspirations and crush them and extinguish liberties. And I was one of those tens of thousands of people who rebelled against it very, very strongly. I was not physical. I did not do anything violent or anything, but I vocally opposed it even during emergency. Apparently, I was kept under surveillance, I got to know later. I did not have any organizational base. I was a nobody. In India, if they don't know your caste, your organization, your background, then they don't know how to deal with you. We are a very hierarchical society, very tribal society. So I was not jailed because I was not very consequential, but I was very vocal. Then emergency was lifted when Janata came to power. We all rejoiced, thinking that the country would see a completely different way of organizing things. But we discovered that the players have changed, but the rules of the game have not changed. It's roughly the same, except that liberty came back to people, the elements of liberty. Therefore, a lot of deep distress. Janata collapsed very quickly. It is that distress about the country that drove me to the civil services, that anguish. Not knowing what to do, desperately eager to do something to bring constitutional values to life and to make life bearable to the bulk of the people. I was lucky. I was one of those very happy ones, by any standard, I was regarded as one of the most successful in civil services in post-independence history. People have been very kind to me. When I did a little bit, they exaggerated what I did. And then when they did things, they attributed that to me. And that's what happens when people of India are alpa santosh, as we call it. With very little, they're very content and they're very grateful and very happy. I was one of those recipients of that benevolence of the people. But I learned a great deal. What I was vaguely feeling, I understood why things went wrong and where we did actually well as a democracy and what needed to be done to make our democracy work for the people. Once you understood that, you had two choices. Either rest on your laurels because I made a reputation, I was respected across the spectrum by all political parties, all political leaders. My career was made, I had no quarrel. Or because change is desperately needed, and without that change, no matter how good you are as a public manager, it would not really make a serious difference. You have to work for change. So the only question for me was not whether, but when. The when was more a circumstantial thing. Once you feel that your learning curve is now reasonably at a peak, and now you have to act on what you've learned, even as you continue to learn. That's when I quit, and that was when I was 40 years old. And then I did not jump into politics. It was actually reform work. Even today, my work is reform work. Incidentally, as a part of that, for 10 years, I led a reform movement. It's a significant success by Indian standards. But my accomplishments are minuscule relative to what India needs. I'm always mindful of that. The public perception of your accomplishments versus the need for India to change. I think we must be very conscious of that difference. So as a part of that quest, I also founded a political party, hoping that at least 10% of Indians would start congregating and consistently supporting the values that we fight for and the change that we seek. But I realized that in most parts of India, because of high centralization of power and the nature of politics, we are still not there. So we are not politically, electorally active, but my work then and now as a civil servant, as a civil society leader, as a political activist, and as a citizen has been the same. The hat I wear may vary from the context, but my style of functioning, my work are identical.
Dr. Narayan, just to pick on from there, this desire to do for society. I read somewhere that you were one of the people who worked seriously, correct me if I'm wrong, seriously in ensuring that parents were given empowerment in school. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've always believed that in any sector, the best way to make democracy work is give the stakeholders voice and power.
Okay.
Then they can hold the system to accountability.
My question to you is that what is the kind of role a parent can play? Could be father, could be mother, in career choices that children make?
Obviously, in our country, they play a much greater role than they should because we have very strong families, which is good. I'm a great supporter of Indian family system. Whatever reforms we bring in, we must not break up families. But a family which is also enabling could be disabling too. You know, even a 6-month-old kid, when you embrace the kid too tightly, the kid will rebel. The kid will try to free herself. It's human nature. Unfortunately, our families embrace our kids too tightly. While that embrace and protection and security net are absolutely vital economically, socially, and psychologically, too tight an embrace, too much of a control over a child's career choices and marriage. These are the two things where the families control the kids' choices excessively, in my view. I think the art should be, how do you retain the strength of the family, at the same time weaken this stranglehold? But it comes from love. I don't think parents do it out of any animosity. It comes out of love and insecurity. We have to somehow create a culture where parents feel two things. One, that a child that loves what she does is more likely to prosper. And two, it's not merely one or two areas that are promising. There are a whole lot of areas in a growing economy. Therefore, the insecurity should be curbed. And of course, there's a larger societal issue of some being menial tasks, some being acceptable tasks, particularly in a caste-ridden society, in a hierarchical society. I think in a modern economy, that's absolute nonsense. A good hairdresser is actually much more valued and makes a lot more money than many technologies that you and I know.
Now so that was a good, Dr. Narayan, that was a good example. Now, let me pick from there and ask you that if a child wants to take up a job, which I as a parent, maybe I'm, let us say, maybe I'm an engineer, maybe my wife is a doctor, and the child wants to pick up some profession which is not, what should I say, which is not current, which is not, I don't want to say that, but I'm saying that, which is not very highly respected. What would you suggest that I do as a parent?
I think first we must develop some sense of detachment. Even as we love our kids, it's a very hard thing. It's easier for us to be objective about somebody else's kids. I have children too, and therefore I have the same problems. All of us, I think, in each of our families, when you raise kids, you have to go through this trauma. But I think we have to recognize that, first of all, the child is not an extension of you. The child is born from you and shares your genes, but the child has a separate, independent personality. When I went to my parents, when I wanted to join civil services, my parents very strenuously objected. And they gave me sound reason. They said, look, you're an independent profession. It's very satisfying. It's economically self-sufficient. And you get the community's respect. You want to join the civil service. Politicians call the shots. By that time, already politics was revived. So why do you want to subject yourself to this? I told them cruelly, when I look back, it was a very cruel statement on my part. Today, I would have said it much more gently. I said to my father, Pitaji, Nanagaru, I came to you for help, not for advice. If you can help me, it will be a little easier. If you don't help me, it will be a little harder. But I don't seek advice. Wonderful people that they are, they did not say another word. They said, we are here with you. But if I don't remember, when I deal with my kids, the approach that I had, that I knew what I wanted to do, why I wanted to do, I needed help. Certainly, I would accept guidance, but not direction. I think
like that
we
point.
must bring that perspective that you remember your own adolescence, your own youth, your dreams. Sometimes they can go wrong out of impulse, emotion. There you try and guide them with your experience, but don't constrain that if they love what they do, as long as what they do is sensible and legal and promotes public good, they will flourish. Don't you worry too much.
I like that point about a parent acting more as a guide than being the decision maker for the child. I'll now move on. I would like you to tell us, so many schools have sprouted these days, what kind of role a school can play in creating not just people who get 99 out of 100. Yesterday, I read in the paper that the cutoff for St. Stephen's for economics is 99.25. And there are cases where in class 10 people have got 500 out of 500, including 100 out of 100 in English. Okay.
Absolutely. English, Sanskrit, French, they can't write one sentence of French or Sanskrit, but still, no.
Leaving that apart, what kind of role can a school play in creating good Indian citizens?
You know, a great teacher is irreplaceable. In my own life, even in a village, I grew up in a village, Telugu medium, government schools, etc. The teachers, the way they inspired us, they opened our minds. You know, in those days, we hardly had any exposure to anything because no internet, no nothing, not even newspapers in the village. But they opened our minds. They were the windows to the world. And even in an urban setting, a great teacher can actually enable us to explore the imagination. I don't know if the school per se can do it unless institutionally they design interaction with mentors like you in various professions and expose the kids to a variety of possibilities in life. That's what the school can do institutionally. And I think some of the better schools are beginning to do it now. But most schools even today do not do it. As I said, they're all focused on examination, inflated marks and grades and so on and so forth, unfortunately. And there's also parental pressure because of insecurity. But a great teacher, even in a bad milieu, everywhere I notice, you go to a coaching factory, but there's always one or two great teachers who inspire you, who make you think. My daughter went through the medical coaching because she wanted to do medicine. And in Andhra Pradesh, at least in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, we have this intense pressure. There's such a competition that you have to really go through that rigorous training. And it was so dispiriting for many youngsters, this MSET coaching, etc. But there were great teachers among them, some of them, who inspired them. Even today, my daughter is beholden to them. So I think it's that teacher who could be of immense value in guiding, in exploring, in helping, in enabling. And I think we must encourage the teachers, at least some of those teachers who are capable of being that, to do it. And institutionally, we can encourage the schools not to merely rigorously adhere to the curriculum and the syllabus and the lesson plan, but expose your students to the many professions and let them interact with them and let the kids make up their minds. I think that's the best thing they can do. World over, they do it routinely.
One thing as we get to wind up our first session, what would be your advice to students today? And I'm talking about school-going students, maybe people in their class 10, 11, 12. What would your advice be?
Don't worry about marks and grades. Not because of a theory. Nobody ever is going to ask you, nobody is going to ask Mr. Pattabhiram, a renowned chartered accountant, what scores you got in your 10th class or intermediate or whatever the pre-university level is or in your undergraduate. Nobody cares. All that people care is how well you are doing now. Do you understand your profession? Are you able to act as a great problem solver? Are you adding value to whatever field you have chosen? Are you making a contribution to society? Not that you should not learn, but there's a difference between success in examinations as they're understood today and real learning. Actually focus on understanding, grasping, and learning and problem solving and critical thinking and exploring the world outside the curriculum. Don't worry about everything else and anything else. It doesn't mean you should do badly at class, but if you do reasonably well, but don't care to get your 99.2, don't be worried at all. You will do reasonably well if you're reasonably intelligent and if you apply yourself a little bit, but explore the world, think a great deal, read a great deal, and talk to people a great deal.
That was lovely, Dr. Narayan. Nice to know that you want parents to walk with their children, allow them to make career choices. We are very much beholden to you for your statement that teachers can make a very significant difference to the life of students. But last but definitely not the least, I was moved by the fact that you said that marks don't matter. Like you very rightly said, till date, nobody has even asked me how many marks that I got in CA. Forget about being in school. I'm sure that many students will listen to this. It will be our endeavor to make sure that many people listen to wise souls like you. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you up again on the other side of this program when we do part 2. Thank you.
Thank you.